Hey peeps, my name is Nick, this is Board Game Brawl, and it is time for the next segment in my Top 100 Games 2015 edition. Today we are counting down from number 90 to number 81. I'm going to tell you the games that I like the most right now at this point in time. You can go back and watch the first segment of this and the introduction if you want a little bit more information. And as usual with each part of the list, I'm going to have second opinions from the users at Board Game Geek. Also, a slight correction, I'm going to add a thing onto the end of the video that I should have added on the first segment, which is a little crawl showing and recapping all of the entries on today's segment of the list. For people who don't want to sit through the whole thing, and how dare you? And for people who just want to recap after they've watched the whole thing to see what was there, I think that would be pretty useful to people. I like seeing those too. So, without further ado, let's get to it. My number 90 is Viticulture from Stonemaier Games. Now, this is actually down 23 spots from number 67 last year, which might surprise people because this year it got a huge expansion called the Tuscany expansion, expanding the world of Viticulture. And I didn't get around to playing it. I own it. It's just, I opened it up and it was incredibly intimidating. There was a ton of different modules, and I said, I want to be thorough in every review that I do, so I'm like, well, I'm going to have to play this like 10 times before I can firmly review it, and I was very intimidated by it and moved on to other things. But it looks incredible, and hey, it's actually an amazing feat that even without this expansion that a lot of people say completely fixes the game and fixes a lot of the issues with it, I still enjoy Viticulture. And, if I had played it more, if I had played the expansion more, earlier in the year, I definitely would be even higher on this list. But still, number 90 is not bad. If you're not familiar with Viticulture, it's a worker placement game about running a vineyard in a winery back in the old country. And it's just great. It's got great visuals. The new edition of the game just looks fantastic and has better components. And it's very light in some regards, but still has a very heavy strategic bent to it. So I enjoy it quite a bit. And Stonemaier Games never fails to deliver. That is Viticulture, number 90 on my list of top 100 games. However, the second opinion from the Board Game Geek crew, Ray of Frost, says, complete garbage! Straight to the point. I love that the supposed fixes don't actually help, verifying that the designers are completely clueless. Run far from this game whenever it is in the vicinity. My number 89 is Bang the Dice Game. I think that's from DV Giochi. It's down 17 spots from number 73. That's not a very big jump. I still enjoy the game quite a bit, and it's one of my go-to filler games. That's the great thing about it, is that it is half party game, half filler game, because it can go to a pretty good number of players, like 8, I think, right out of the box. Well, sadly, there hasn't been an expansion for the game, and if there had been something for it, it probably would have been even higher, but it still gets to the table quite a bit. This is essentially the original Bang card game, which I've never played, but people tell me has not aged well. It's very, very long. But it takes the same ideas of that game and puts it into a Yahtzee-style dice game, and it's just very fast, it's very easy to learn, it's got great components and artwork, and it just works very, very well with a lot of people. Some people hate the randomness of it, but because it's so short, I just don't mind it that much. And I love hidden role games, so there you have it, where someone's the sheriff, and you got the deputies, and you're trying to find the outlaws, so on and so forth. I'm sure you know the deal. That is Bang the Dice Game, my number 89. But MDJD, these games are really complicated, says, more garbage. Utter garbage. Mindless dice rolling. Player elimination. This has the perfect storm of things I hate in games. People like using the word garbage to describe things. My number 88 is brand new to the list, and that is Champions of Midgard from Grey Fox Games. Now, if you've been paying attention, and if you watched my introduction, then you would know that Lords of Waterdeep was in my 101 to 110, which means that Champions of Midgard, which a lot of people have said is a replacement for Lords of Waterdeep, has indeed, for me at least, not replaced it necessarily, but definitely pushed it out of the running for top 100. And look, it's not a huge jump. I mean, it's only 20 spaces, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that Champions of Midgard is a newer game. But the fact is, I love theme in games, and even though I love good mechanisms, and I think that even though Champions of Midgard and Lords of Waterdeep both have the mechanism part covered, Champions of Midgard just does a better job with the theme, where you are these Viking warriors and worker placement, but you're doing this worker placement to get warriors represented by dice, and you're using these warriors to fight off sea monsters or other types of land monsters, like zombie things. I don't remember what they're called, but you're also going to this like shrine to get your destiny cards, which are victory points, and you have to get food, and you have to feed your Vikings, you have to buy ships to transport your Vikings to fight the sea monsters. There's just a lot of really cool thematic elements, and they all come together together very nicely. And I think that if there's ever an expansion for this game that's good, it's going to completely destroy Lords of Waterdeep and remove it out of the running altogether. But for now, I do like the expansion for Lords of Waterdeep quite a bit. So that is Champions of Midgard, my number 8. It may be brand new, but it is definitely, unapologetically, a game that is worthy of this list. On the other hand, Kurt C. says, a completely pedestrian worker placement game plagued by the canonical... I've never said that word correctly. Canonical worst game design choice ever. Choose what other player to lose points with no other change in game state. My number 87 is also new to the list, and it is called Animals Frightening Night! From Moe's Games, I believe. This is a werewolf-style game, in the sense that everyone's going to have a hidden role, and there's like a night phase, and there's people waking up, and people taking special actions, and then people trying to kill other people. But this one has a much more lighthearted theme of being a bunch of farm animals, and what's interesting about it is that every animal has its own scoring condition and different ways that you can affect the game, and sometimes you want to help your partners, and sometimes you don't. It's not like a team versus team game. It's everyone out for themselves, and I like that. I like that they made the game much more gamey. I like that there's still that excitement of a hidden role game, but with actually feeling like you're doing something other than just an activity or like some role-playing LARPing session. And that's what I got from Animals Frightening Night. It does have a steep learning curve for the rules, but I think that once you get past them for the first time, it flows very smoothly, and it's a very solid, very interesting game, and a worthy addition to the genre of hidden roles and deduction. That is Animals Frightening Night from Moe's Games. I believe that's the name of their company. However, as a second opinion, Zunir says, derivative, overly complex for such a simple concept, has timing issues, and it's harder to teach than it has any right to be. My number 86 is Parade from Z-Man Games. This is down 5 spots from last year when it was number 81, which is not a big drop at all. It's right about where I think you would expect it to be for quite a long time. This is a solid filler card game. I really enjoy it. I think it's originally a Japanese design, and you can kind of tell because it has some basic elements to it as far as like set collection and just trying to put out higher numbers and things like that. But then it has really interesting twists to it, which a lot of Japanese card games have. As far as you don't want to get points at all, but then you have to count in this line, hence the name of the game, Parade. Like the number card that you put out determines how many cards you get to skip and then potentially take cards. Really hard to wrap your head around the very first time you play, but after that, very smooth, very fun, very fast game. It looks beautiful with this Z-Man edition, with this Alice in Wonderland art that they've used for it. So it's essentially themeless, but at least it has great art for you to look at the same time. And it's just a great game. It's been a hit with everyone that I've played it with, especially if you have people who like traditional card games, like any kind of card game, like Rummy or anything like that. This is the type of game to graduate them up to, because it has a little bit of an edge to it, but it's still easy to understand, and it's great to look at. That is Parade from Z-Man Games. However, Disco Rhino says, it's a sad parade. Number 85 is probably one of the oldest games on my list, but nevertheless it is new to this year's list. I don't think I actually owned it by the time I put out the list last year. I had to trade a whole stack of games for this one, and it was one of the Grail games for me. That is called Star Wars: The Queen's Gambit, one of the few Star Wars games I actually like as well. This was a game based off of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. It originally came out from Avalon Hill, and because it was based off of The Phantom Menace, and because it was made out of a ton of plastic, it was never reproduced afterwards, and while it got very little notoriety at the time, I believe, now it's a cult classic that gamers all over the place want, and for good reason. Not only is it a spectacle of a game with tons of miniatures and this 3D palace that you build, all of this representing the final battle sequence, so like the last 30 minutes of The Phantom Menace, but also it's actually a solid game. It's a very simple game where you're just drawing cards, playing cards, dark side versus light side, and what you do on what the card that you play, you choose a battlefield part of the game to influence, and what happens there could influence the other battles. If you're doing well with the Jedi battle versus Darth Maul, then you might have a chance to run into the palace and rip through guards and get to the princess or save the princess. And if you're winning against the Gungans or vice versa against the battle droids, you get to draw more cards potentially, which could help you out everywhere. So really, really cool. Definitely thematic. Even if you didn't like the any of the prequel movies, which I did not. I was very disappointed in them. I still enjoy this game and wish it would be reproduced. There is another version of this called Star Wars Risk, which is not like Risk at all. It's like not a junior version, but it is a toned down version of this game that actually represents the Battle of Endor at the end of Return of the Jedi, and that's also a solid game as well, but nothing quite beats the Queen's Gambit, unfortunately, for those who are trying to find a copy nowadays. Just a fantastic game. However, Lord Prussian says, 4 games in 1, but the one game that matters is strictly a dice roll. I'd rather play Yahtzee and get it over with. The other games might be interesting if they mattered. This one gets my vote for the most overrated game on BGG. My number 84 is technically new to the list, but it replaced something else that was already on the list last year, and the game that it replaced was Star Realms. This game is Cthulhu Realms. Now, they are very, very similar in some regards, except obviously the theme. Instead of starship battling factions, now it's like Cthulhu cultists battling each other. It's kind of nebulous. But I enjoy Cthulhu Realms more. And I think that if a good expansion for it comes out, I'll forget completely about Star Realms. This is essentially a game where what Star Realms was just head-to-head, and it could be multiplayer, but Cthulhu Realms puts the multiplayer right in the box, and it works very well, where you have like different rows of cards between each other, and you can buy from them, and you're really influencing the people on either side of you until things narrow down. So right in the beginning, it's very hard for everyone to gang up on one person until things get more constricted, but by that point, even if someone gangs up on you, you have a ton of really powerful cards. So it works very well. I like the artwork. The iconography is a bit of a pain in the butt, but at least everything else works very well. So that is Cthulhu Realms. It replaces Star Realms. So Star Realms was actually number 54 last year, so you can say this is a 30 entry drop, but not technically. However, Dweeb, wow, it's impressive that he got the screen name Dweeb with no alterations to it. This re-theme of a knockoff slaps the tired Lovecraft theme onto the tired deck building system. Number 83 is Yido. This is down 55 spots from number 28. I just haven't played it that much this year, but it's still a fantastic worker placement game. Again, much like with Champions of Midgard, it's not enough to have a worker placement game. It's got to have a fantastic theme to it, which is not always the easiest thing to do, but Yido pulls that off very well, where you are these warring feudal lords in Japan, and you are trying to gather your resources and gather your agents in order to complete missions all around the city, in order to elevate your family above the others, and hopefully make a play for daimyo. In fact, you could potentially assassinate the daimyo, which is very interesting when that happens. There's a lot of cutthroatness to the game. It's very brutal. It's very tight. There are event cards that can be disastrous. They're literally called like disaster cards or something, which a lot of people choose. They're samurai cards is what they're called. And a lot of people choose not to play with them. I say play with them because everyone can be affected by them, and it just gives the game more and more of an edge, which makes it more distinct from the other worker placement games out there. Just love the theme on this one. This is Yido from Pandasaurus and now IDW Games. However, Papipo says, if it weren't too long and had so much luck, I might like it. But right now, I think it just sucks a lot. My number 82 fell the number of spots that it was last year. It is down 41 spots from number 41. That is Dungeon Guilds from Mo Ideas Game Design. Now, interestingly enough, this game is going to be reprinted from Queen Games, and I didn't even know about it until it was too late. It was on Kickstarter as a completely, not totally rethemed games. It still had to do with monsters and dungeons, but now you're like monsters trying to invade a castle or something like that. I don't know, but it looks completely different, and I completely didn't notice that it was just a retheme of Dungeon Guilds. I don't even remember the name of that game. But Dungeon Guilds is a very light game where you are taking a hand of chibi adventurers and you're putting them onto different levels of a dungeon represented by different monsters, but you don't know what the power of the monster is right away. And each of your chibi adventurers has a number on it, and you want to put them down together with another player on the other side and try to beat the total strength of that monster in order to get its loot. Here's the catch. First off, people can bump other people out from those monsters, but also, if one level of the dungeon fails, in other words, the adventurers who are there are not able to beat the strength of that monster when they flip it over, every dungeon level below it fails. So this leads to some very interesting cutthroat situations where someone can play very low cards on the top level just to say, oh, I'm not getting anything this round. Screw all of you. And if you die, if the dungeon levels fail, you get nothing and you're wounded, which is even worse. That means you have to lose points just to heal your guys. So very interesting cutthroat game. I like the chibi artwork, and who knows, maybe this new one will be better. But for now, Dungeon Guilds, if you can find it from Mo Ideas Game Design, is solid. The only reason I think it fell is just because, again, I've played a ton of new games in the past year. However, Moramus says, pointless. Our last one for today, my number 81, is also a brand new game to the list, and it is Witness from Istari Games, I believe, and Asmodee. There's really nothing else like this game. Certainly not on my list, and perhaps in most of board gaming. It's easy to say that this is an activity, but it certainly is a game, and there certainly is winning and losing, and if you lose, which will happen a lot, which means that you just did not get, well, the losing is just you're getting a crappy score. And that's going to happen a lot in this game until you and your group really get in step with how you should be running it. And if you're not familiar with what Witness is, which is hard to say, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But Witness is essentially a game of telephone where you are going to have these different mysteries, and everyone represents a character who has their own character booklet from their point of view. It's based on this old French comic strip, but you are trying to solve a mystery, whatever it might be. It might be trying to infiltrate a group of people at a table, like spies and things, or figuring out a murder and looking at the clues of a crime scene. Every player has a different set of information, and you need to work together cooperatively to get that information to the other players. But you do this by whispering in their ear as much information as you think they can remember to help them remember your clue. And then the next person is going to whisper something to you. The game must be played with 4 players, which is a disadvantage of it. But this game has met with fantastic success in my group. Everyone has loved it. Everyone says, all right, we got some time to kill. We got to play Witness. I mean, that's how popular it's been, and I personally love it as well. It's just great. There's tons of scenarios. You'll never get old, and if you play through all of them, you'll probably have forgotten all the clues from the first few anyway, so you might as well go back. That is Witness from Istari and Asmodee. However, Nicholas Weiss has a second opinion, another Nicholas. He says, well, a part of what he says is, among other things, also, don't play with trolls, otherwise you might regularly end up asked to pass additional information about genitals. Well, that's that, everyone. Another segment of the list done. There's more coming at you fast and furious. I want to finish this thing up quick, and I hope that you're enjoying them. Tune in next time, if I can even speak today, for numbers 80 to 71. I hope you do. Thank you so much. Take care.